Hello, I'm Annette Young and welcome to the 51%. In this edition, we're taking a look at the value of women's work during the Covid-19 era. Coming up, in Spain, thousands of domestic workers, such as cleaners and carers, are finally given access to unemployment benefits, but only during the pandemic. And has one side effect of the lockdown been the return of the 1950s housewife, where women are once again assumed to be in charge of running the household while working from home? Or is it indeed 50-50? We'll be talking to Dr Heejung Chung, a sociologist at the University of Kent. But we begin in Spain, where 600,000 women work as home help or carers across the nation. Before Covid-19, they could be made redundant without any rights to unemployment benefits. In March, the government announced all employees except for domestic workers would be able to get a special allowance if they are out of work. But the government has now changed its mind, as Thomas Waterhouse reports.
Just a few weeks ago, Dolores had no right to claim unemployment benefits.
Y he cotizado y de repente que alguien me diga no tienes derecho a nada, si te despiden te van a despedir y ya está. Y las medidas que nos sacan ahora mismo ni siquiera nos contemplan, pues no me parece justo.
In Spain, domestic workers are the only section of the workforce who are registered with social security but who are unable to benefit from state help when they're out of work. As the coronavirus pandemic hit, lots of women, including Dolores, found themselves literally out of work overnight.
Muchas compañeras me dicen, yo más que miedo al coronavirus le tengo miedo a no llegar a fin de mes, porque están siendo despedidas.
Some 600,000 women are employed as domestic workers across Spain. To help them ride out this current sanitary storm, the government has taken some exceptional steps. An unemployment allowance has been made available to all domestic workers who've been laid off or who are unable to fully work as they used to because of COVID-19.
Las personas trabajadoras del hogar, la gran mayoría mujeres, hacen un trabajo importantísimo y, por desgracia, muy poco reconocido, limpiando, cocinando, cuidando niños o a personas mayores. No puede ser que otra vez las grandes olvidadas en lo que se refiere a los derechos sociales y la protección social sean las trabajadoras del hogar.
A month after the government announced these measures, domestic workers can now claim this allowance and are entitled to 70% of their base salary. But many are still not fully satisfied.
Muchos años reclamando los mismos derechos, reclamando esta equiparación total y real del sector doméstico.
For the hundreds of thousands who help keep Spanish homes ticking over, this temporary allowance will only be paid while the coronavirus pandemic lingers.
So with a sizable chunk of the world's population still living in lockdown, who has ended up doing the more housework and or ensuring the children get homeschooled? Have we seen the return of the 1950s housewife, who on top of keeping things running smoothly on the home front is also having to do all of this while working from home? Or is it indeed 50-50? We've asked some of you what you thought.
At the beginning of the lockdown, it was very difficult for me because we were not sharing the load equally at all, and it was hard to run the business working from home. So I decided on a little game that I called the lockdown bingo. So every time my husband would ask me a question about something in the house, I would put a little check mark. So the one that got the most was c'est où les devoirs en fait? So it was mostly trying to locate where the instructions were for the schoolwork. But also we had what did you plan for lunch? For me, it was quite interesting to see which areas were totally unknown to my husband, despite living in the same house for quite some time.
We have actually given up on housework. Myself and my husband are running 2 companies, managing schooling for 2 children, and looking after a cat, dog, and horse. Interesting times.
Me mostly, as I can work from home. My wife is a nurse and still working lunch shifts and extra shifts.
He works while I have to mind the kids and do the household chores. There was no questioning it. I had to be the one to take parental leave.
I do everything in the house. The cleaning, I have to cook with 2 girls in high school and help them with homework because it's not easy on a computer.
She works while I look after the kids, teach them their lessons, and do the cooking. I even hang up clothes sometimes.
Joining me now from Canterbury is Dr Heejung Chung, a sociologist at the University of Kent who's written extensively on this topic. Dr Chung, thank you so much for your time. So let me ask you, in this pandemic era, are we witnessing the rebirth of the 1950s housewife?
Yes, I'm afraid so. So, I mean, theoretically, when both parents are working from home and his kids are off school or childcare, etc., you would expect that both parents do kind of a 50-50 share of schooling the kids, but taking care of kids, etc. But in reality, I'm afraid that the patterns we're seeing now is that the women are taking the majority, the large bulk of the care, but also housework that is kind of happening during the COVID lockdown.
And the lockdown has also revealed how much support working mothers rely on normally, such as creches, schools, grandparents, nannies, cleaners, and all of that has now disappeared, hasn't it?
Yes, and that's exactly what it is. So from the 1970s onwards until now, women have joined the labor market in record numbers. So we have one of the highest numbers of women, but also mothers joining the labor force in the past few decades. And now that has been only enabled through the fact that women have been now able to outsource a lot of the work. So again, schools, after-school clubs, breakfast clubs, childminders, nannies, childcare providers, and even housework as well through cleaners, restaurants, takeouts, and online shopping, etc. So what that means is that despite the fact that women are doing, in the labor market in record numbers, doing a lot of hours in the labor market, men haven't actually increased the number of hours of housework and care that they've been doing. So during this lockdown where everything's been shut down, what has happened? It's, again, the women who are responsible, because in the fact that even when men and women were both working and there was no lockdown, women were doing twice, 3 times as much housework and care. But also, if they were outsourcing it, they were the ones doing the mental load of kind of managing everything so that women could go into work.
So do you think with younger men that there is a difference in attitudes towards sharing the load, especially given many more of them, say under the age of 35, grew up with working mothers compared to their older peers?
I think in terms of attitudes, yes, definitely. You see that there are more progressive kind of gender norms or gender role attitudes amongst young people, both men and women. And you see a lot of fathers saying that they want to spend more time with children because the ideas of what a good father isn't just like a stoic father who makes, who is a breadwinner, but also, plays with the kids, etc. Now, the problem is when it comes to what we consider routine housework, such as, the not so fun housework, such as cleaning and laundry, as well as some of the things that you need to do with children, such as what we're all experiencing, homeschooling, men are not actually doing much of that share. They want to do some, but not necessarily some of the kind of the dirty housework as well as the boring childcare. And that's kind of where we see the big difference between men and women in that generation.
What would you say to women out there struggling to manage it all?
Well, I would say that, you're not alone. This is an incredible time, an extraordinary time where, to be honest, it's almost kind of a miracle that we're able to do any work at all in these kind of horrendous times. And trying to manage both childcare, housework, but a lot of emotional work, as many of you know, that we're now kind of bearing a lot of the emotional work of worrying about your children's well-being, your parents' well-being, other family members that may be outside your household, and to try to do your normal kind of load, it's almost impossible. But another thing I would like to mention is that a lot of the unequal division is not necessarily, we're not pitching men against women. It's not that men are just, horrible and they do this, to women. It's just that everyone, both men and women, kind of fall back on what you assume to be the case, the social norms of our roles. And it is a really good time for couples to think about this and not just assume, okay, so because I've been doing this, I should be the one responsible for, education and housework, but have a conversation. How much work is currently being done between the two of you? What's an equal share? What is a fair share? I'm not saying 50-50, but what's really important is that you feel that this is a right division and you feel fair. Because if you don't, there's going to be lots of bad consequences for not just yourself, the moms, but the dads and the couple's relationship in the future. So I think it's a good conversation to have at the moment.
But it does seem COVID-19 has fast-tracked the working from home movement. It's clearly here to stay, and more of us are and will continue to be doing it. So what steps do companies need to take in order to acknowledge that their employees, when they're working from home, also have other responsibilities?
Someone was saying that we're all BBC dads now. So before, when we were at work, we were kind of seen as a worker with no other responsibilities outside work, only privileging work and only that. And that somehow it makes us better workers. But I think that's not the case. And as this kind of COVID lockdown has shown us, we are workers, but also we're parents, we're partners, we're daughters, sons, etc. And being able to fulfill all of those responsibilities actually makes us good workers. And I think employers really need to understand that not just women, but also men have all these responsibilities and they need to pick it up. Otherwise, women will not be able to kind of fulfill their labor market potentials as they have done before. But the other thing is, once you really acknowledge that these workers are embedded in families or communities or elsewhere, that you actually get happier and more productive workers that will provide you with better outcomes, especially in the longer run. And also, finally, trust workers. If they are able to do some work now during this pandemic at home, when this is over, it's their abilities to work from home and the productivity levels will skyrocket.
Heejung Chung, it's been great speaking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And that's it for this edition. You can also connect with us via our Facebook page, that of course being France24.51%, or do send us a tweet at _51%. So until our next show, bye for now.